Big story today is Harvard University, something that I didn't think I'd ever see happen. One of the most powerful institutions in the country, the oldest college in the country, going way back to the colonial era before the revolution, now possibly it's back on its heels. It's not just at war with the Trump administration in sort of a hilarious look at these all these old white guys fighting each other. There's actually concern that Harvard might be in real trouble, and that they might actually, I don't know, have to close, shut down, somehow curtail their operations, that they are at a disadvantage against the Trump administration, something that I did not think we would possibly see ever. I mean, to me, Harvard seems like impervious. It's older than the Republic, a lot older than the Republic. It's, we've had many former presidents went to Harvard, many members of Congress, captains of industry.
Hundreds of Nobel Prize winners.
I mean, it's it's Harvard, right? I mean, it's literally the most important college and university in the United States. I say this as someone who went to Columbia. I mean, and I read in today's New York Times that, the government currently holds all the cards. John, what shocked me and really surprised me, and I think I could see why some of my right-wing friends might be upset at Harvard, the statistic that 27% of Harvard students are from overseas, that blew me away.
Yeah, I was surprised by that.
I don't think that any college should not have international students. I think they really enliven the academic experience for everybody, including them, and it's including for Americans. But more than 1 out of 4, I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, that might be obviously they're a profit center. They don't get financial aid. So at close to $100,000 a year for undergrad, the college is going to rake in close to $500,000 per international student, free and clear. I know they say they don't think about these things, but we know they do. They have to, and then also a lot of those people end up staying in the United States. They get job offers here in the U.S. That causes brain drain for countries overseas, but supposedly it's a benefit for our economy. But I can see nativist and xenophobic resentments really coming front and center here, from people who are underemployed in STEM and other fields, and they feel like I didn't get into Harvard. How come this person from XYZ country got into Harvard? And I mean, where do we start here? Oh, I guess I should say the Trump administration has ordered under Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem, has ordered Harvard to completely stop accepting international students, which said would be a major financial blow.
And those international students that are there must transfer to other universities immediately.
I guess presumably the spring's term is over.
And a federal judge yesterday froze that decision pending a hearing. This is clearly unconstitutional. The administration can't do it, but that's not the issue. The issue is that the administration has successfully terrified Harvard, and by extension has frightened other universities into proactively doing what Donald Trump wants them to do. There's no downside to having international students. I mean, look at Stanford. It's like half the campus is Chinese, and most of them stay and work in tech companies in Silicon Valley. It's good for the United States. It's good for our economy. This is just a swipe that Donald Trump is taking against Harvard because there have been pro-Palestinian and pro-human rights demonstrations at Harvard, just like there have been at Columbia and elsewhere, that he does not approve of. And this is something maybe you and I should talk about at some point, maybe even today. And that is what appears to be distance that Donald Trump is putting between himself and Benjamin Netanyahu as a person, while still just carrying Israel's water. I heard yesterday, a friend of mine said, we used to say that Trump was Netanyahu's bitch. And now it's more appropriate to say Trump is Israel's bitch. Maybe not Netanyahu's.
Yeah, no, that is what it looks like. I think that's really well said, John. I couldn't agree more. Up until recently, it was kind of like, I guess it makes sense, right? I mean, prime ministers come and go. Netanyahu, obviously, I mean, I'd like to say he's not long for that post, but he's been around, he's been around a long time. So don't count him out. But but definitely, we really saw, in particular after the shooting of the two Israeli embassy staffers, how the conflation of anti-Zionism with anti-Semitism has been, it's official administration policy. Everyone in the administration, including the president himself, repeated that talking point over and over. This was an anti-Semitic act. Still, there's no evidence of that whatsoever. That may well prove to be true, but we don't know. And at the same time, most of the corporate media has been pretty much willing to go along with that as well. Although there was an interesting piece in the Times today where, Blinken, you miss it, and you might miss it on the op-ed page, sort of echoing a point that I made in my syndicated column from 2 weeks ago, saying that this may have been partly the result of violence directed of this sort is the result of conflating anti-Semitism with anti-Zionism, and that it's always been dangerous from a Jewish point of view to do that. Obviously, there's a lot of Jewish people who are very opposed to Netanyahu, his government, his policies, the war in Gaza, and so on, and have been for a long time. But they somehow, have been unpersoned in all this. But yes. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. For years and years and years, I always heard this whole Israel controls everything. They're the puppet masters in the U.S. in the highest corridors of power. And I've always been very reluctant to subscribe to that because it feeds into anti-Semitic tropes. Okay, I know that's in contradiction to what I just said, but it kind of does. And it's also, but it's becoming harder and harder to escape that this tiny little country the size of New Jersey is telling the biggest, most powerful country in the world, maybe not the biggest, but the most powerful country in the world, what to do and what tune to dance to. It's weird.
It is weird. It's inexplicable to not just foreign nationals who ask about it, but to a lot of Americans. Like, how did this happen? How did we allow this to happen? Because this wasn't always the case. There's a famous video, you can find it on YouTube, I did, of Harry Truman talking about U.S. recognition of Israel in 1948. And he said that, the U.S., of course, was heavily involved in the creation of the state of Israel. It was the first country to recognize Israel, although the Soviet Union said that they recognized Israel first. And Truman said in this video that by the end of the negotiations, both the Jews and the Muslims hated him. And that's how he knew that he had done a good job. Looking back historically, not really.
That's a talking point. I'm sure you've heard from what I call militant moderates. They always say that, right? Like, like I have a friend who's a top-ranking editor at the New York Times, and he always says, I know the liberals hate me, the conservatives hate me, so that's how I know I'm right. I'm like, that's not logical. I mean, you might be right in those circumstances, but also sometimes the facts lead you to an extreme. Sometimes extremism is correct. Sometimes there is no reasonable middle ground. Like, for example, being against the genocide in Gaza. Oh, what's the middle ground? Like half genocide? I mean, that's not a reasonable position, right? Right. Only extremism, being completely against it, is the reasonable position. So it's very strange. I mean, a lot of people don't really understand or remember the history of how the U.S. came to recognize Israel, right? But I guess we could have a history lesson some other time. But so I mean, I'm interested in why Harvard is
why Harvard? What about that?
Most of the protests were the biggest protests that started them all were at Columbia. And Columbia has been targeted, but they, to my knowledge, have not been told that they can't accept international students. Also, there were much bigger protests at other schools, like on the West Coast, for example. But they don't, I think UCLA had some major, very violent confrontations, and most of the violence coming from the pro-Israel students.
Yes.
So, I mean, but still, those schools haven't been targeted apparently at all. So
what about GW? Right here, two blocks, literally 2 blocks from the White House. GW had large, active demonstrations, a tent city, but the new president of GW just caved proactively, got on her knees, and told the White House, we'll do anything you want us to do. So any student who had been involved in the protest was not permitted to walk in graduation. Some of them have been banned from campus, despite the fact that until a week ago, they were active students. They did everything proactively that the White House would have wanted them to do. And Harvard didn't. To their credit, Larry Summers made a statement yesterday that Donald Trump has no idea what the Harvard psyche is like. That if he thinks that this is going to make Harvard bow to him, he doesn't know anything. And the first thing they did, which literally everybody predicted, was that they would file a suit. They filed the suit within hours. Yesterday, a federal judge froze the White House order. Now it's going to have to play out in the courts. I'm confident Donald Trump is going to lose. But that's really not
must have been prepared in advance.
Had to be. You said weeks and weeks ago that a lot of the major universities were consulting one another and preparing for this kind of event. And sure enough, it came, but they were ready for him.